Welcome back, fast people that don't even move, to the Game & Muscle YouTube channel. In this video we're jumping back into Project Cars 2 to do an 8-lap race against the artificial intelligence at the Nürburgring GP circuit in the BMW M6 GT3 car. Now, to make things a visual feast, I have set the time to begin it around about 2 PM and 50% time acceleration. So the Earth is rotating rather quickly. Hopefully we don't fly off it. But by the end of this race, it should indeed be night time, and we'll get to admire the spectacle that is the dynamic light in Project Cars 2. Now, I've set the AI difficulty to 100, and it goes up to 150, and I've set the AI aggression to we've been at the pub all evening mode at maximum, which is 100. Now, before I start talking about the car specifically and how it handles and other aspects of the game, bear in mind that it's a press version of the game I'm using, and it's approximately 3 million years old. I think it's actually 2 months from the current build that they've got internally, and I don't know where it'll be in relation to the final build, but obviously there will be differences between this version and the version that gets printed digitally. I assume they've already actually printed the disc, but you know, that'll be day one patch and all that business. I don't know how they're planning to do it. Now, another thing worth pointing out is you will notice on this side of the screen that stuff pops off the image that you can see in the recorded video. Now, some people are going, oh, this is terrible, why is it this, what's going on? The Earth doesn't have trees that disappear when you turn around. Actually, they do. You just don't notice it because the world is really good at doing it. But the reason this happens in Project Cars 2 is when you're recording virtual reality, it's recording from the left eye, which is why you'll also notice that it looks like I'm sat slightly too far on the left-hand side of the screen, because you're looking at the left eye rather than the right eye, the left and right eye combined. Of course, I can see this in 3D whilst I'm playing. And because it's recording out the left eye, and in VR with the headset, you can't actually see that very edge of the screen where stuff is disappearing off. So the game is basically removing stuff from the screen so that it can run faster. It's culling them objects, and that allows it to actually run better, get better VR performance, and you can't see it on your headset. Now, maybe in the final version, they might make that less aggressive for recording, or you could just they could just crop the actual output view so you know it's not, you wouldn't be able to see it. But that explains that for those of you that were a little bit confused as to why objects were disappearing at the side of the screen. I wasn't expecting that to take 2 minutes to explain. Now, I'll also try and answer some comments and some things that have been pointed out, following on from our physics video, which not only caused a bizarre Brexit debate. I don't know how sim racing relates to Brexit. It's all connected, but there you go. But we also had Riman point out about the understeer aspect of the cars, because one of the things I did say in the physics video was that a lot of the cars did seem rather understeery, and obviously part of that is that the default setups are generally, for a lot of the vehicles, in the understeer direction. Now, this is obviously because the game's going to be released on console. A lot of people are going to be playing with game controllers, and there's nothing more frustrating with a game controller than trying to catch oversteer with a little floppy joystick, and then also trying to balance the accelerator and brake in ways that don't induce more oversteer. So actually having an understeery general nature to a lot of the tighter vehicles, the sort of Formula cars, race cars, makes pretty good sense from a design perspective. Now, I also talked to someone at Slightly Mad Studios, and they said, yeah, this is the case, this is how they've been set up. The press version as well doesn't have final car setups in it, because that's obviously something that gets worked on when literally everything else is done, you know, and it's just it's the final phase, the final countdown, whilst the studio's going into complete meltdown due to needing to get a product to market. Also, interestingly, what they pointed out, and what I've also found to be true, having driven more of the cars in the game now, is that you certainly find some vehicles actually set up more neutral than others, depending on how fast they are and how difficult they are to generally control. So it depends on the car, and strangely, this BMW M6 GT3 with the default setup is actually pretty much bang on neutral. No, it understeers a little bit on the brakes, but for the most part, throttle behaviour and everything else is neutral to oversteery. So maybe this is a car that they will eventually make understeery for those people unfortunate enough to be driving with little analog nipples. Of course, the point is as well that you can make your own setups, and you've got the racing engineer, dude bro, that you can complain to, say that the car that you spent millions on is terrible and you want it to turn into corners more, and it will suggest stuff, which is actually quite a nice system. It's not maybe as advanced as it could be, but it does the job to the basic level of if you're completely and utterly clueless and you wanted a general characteristic from a car, you could use this as an introduction to your setup. So that's really nice. We'll do a separate video on that anyway. So, that's it. That's the setups and the understeer. We also had a rather fun comment from 1027 Istro. Riding the curbs and grass in the dry/wet in almost every corner and the car remains completely stable equals Simcade. Now, I don't know if maybe my sarcasm detector is broken or something and he's just being sarcastic. But I can assure you the grass in this game is indeed slippy, and the curbs are as well. What tends to happen is that the curbs and the grass actually pull the car to the side a little bit, and they do destabilise the vehicle. Now, it's not the case that the curbing is ice, and it seems to vary from track to track and the type of curbing. I don't think the curbing itself isn't particularly slippy, but, you know, you can find examples in the real world where you've got cars that completely lose control over a slightly bit of damp paint, and other times you've got Robert Kubica trying to overtake Schumacher on the grass, and you know, even people on desert tracks trying to overtake with radicals on sand, and actually pulling it off without losing control. So there's real world examples where it's grippy and slippy, and you know, so you can't really tell from the video in the game. All I can say is that the grass is indeed lower grip than the road circuit. You generally will want to avoid the grass. I don't think it's an indication of it being Simcade or realistic either way. The grass is more grippy than it is in R-Factor 2. It's different from the grass in Assetto Corsa. In Assetto Corsa, the grass is really quite smooth. It's more bumpy in this. And again, compared to iRacing, the grass is kind of smooth in iRacing as well. I guess it's a little bit more slippy in iRacing. But, you know, these swings and roundabouts, typically, you don't want to be driving on the grass. It's something you normally avoid, and they've got a pretty reasonable penalty system that you'll actually see in this video. When you do cut the track, it will come up and it'll say, yeah, you need to give the time back, or if you've gained a place from cutting the corner, it'll say you need to give that place back. So you're not going to be, unless you're doing the Rallycross, which is just really good fun, or doing specific off-road driving in the game, which is again really fun, it's not something you're going to be doing in the race cars for the most part, and you will be avoiding it. So hopefully that settles that, as we find ourselves halfway through the race, lap 4 of 8, position 4 of 25. And this is one thing you'll notice, or one thing I've noticed with the version I've got, is that you do have this sort of spacing out of the AI, in that you've got these front... You end up with packs, kind of as you sort of see in the real world racing, but you end up with the front 4 or so AI cars being a lot better than the next pack and the pack before them. So if you do qualify in that top group of cars, you then actually have a couple of cars that you'll likely be battling with, rather than generally just driving off by yourself. If you qualify at the back, you will tend to find that you have to make up quite a big gap if you get stuck behind traffic and you can't pass it straight away. Bearing in mind, though, that the difficulty on here is, as I say, 100, and it goes even higher. I think for me, this difficulty I've got is good if I'm starting at the back of the race, and I wouldn't say I'm a terrible sim racer. I'm not an amazing sim racer. I'm sort of probably in the top 10% or so. It's hard to say with sim racing because that last 1% is absolutely mental. And then, of course, you've got the different simulators, and, you know, if I was to jump into Live for Speed, I get absolutely destroyed by the veterans of that. Same with iRacing, people that have played the specific cars and tracks for years. You know, they're almost godlike at that certain vehicle track combo, so it's hard to place yourself. Regardless, assuming that I'm reasonably good for someone that's playing a single player driving simulator, I would say most people that are of that reasonable good level would probably want to put the AI difficulty just above 100 and then qualify in the top 6 or so, and you'll actually get a reasonably good race with the AI. Now, one thing I have noticed is quite nice with the AI is the way they do make mistakes, and the improvement of the AI over Project Cars 1, in the sense that They are still quite aggressive at times, and they will knock into you. But I mean, that will happen online with real people. That happens in real world racing. Crucially though, unlike Project Cars 1 and unlike some other sims out there at times, the AI definitely makes a really big effort to not absolutely pulverise you. And they'll actually, they tend to drive into each other more. They make quite funny mistakes driving into each other, and sometimes they make mistakes driving into each other trying to actually avoid you. Like, say if I'm going reasonably slow into a corner and there's an AI going for a bit of a dive bomb, which they will do, which is nice, as I say, up the inside or around the outside. Rather than driving into you, they'll actually drive into each other, as to not ruin your race, which I think is a nice design choice. I wouldn't say the AI's absolutely perfect. I don't know how much that's going to be finalised and changed in the final version of the game. But from my time with this so far, with the cars I've driven, it definitely seems better than my experience with Project Cars 1, which just drove me crazy. So, yeah, it's nice and looks really hopeful for the final version of the game. As the sun goes down, and one thing you really notice actually when you've got dynamic light on a track is just how different the circuits look in the different light, and how it changes your visibility of things like brake markers and working out where you actually need to hit the brake to get into the corner or just position the car properly. It depends from track to track. Some tracks aren't so bad for it. I mean, this Nürburgring GP is a fairly clear track regardless of the light or the weather. It's a reasonably simple track to actually hit stuff. This corner coming over the top of the hill, though, actually is an easy one to mess up when the lighting changes, because it can be hard to... I use the little off-road as a brake point, and it can be hard to tell where the road is or if it's a shadow. But other than that, most of the circuit is really quite clear. But you definitely notice on other circuits, when the lighting changes, you've got the shadows from the trees, it can be really quite off-putting and really add in a extra layer of difficulty, especially if you're trying to push and you're driving more competitively. Online, for example, as we missed the break point, go off the corner, and we should get the track. There you go. The race marshals not happy with our line through that corner. I don't know why. I think it was perfectly acceptable dragging half a ton of dirt onto the circuit there. But you know, that's just my opinion. I'm a driver, so it doesn't mean anything. You notice as well, actually, not only with the light changing, but also just the skybox changing, the clouds. This is probably because I've just been playing X-Plane 11. We've got this obsession with weather today. But playing X-Plane 11, you notice, just the different types of lighting, how that affects the clouds and the horizon and everything. Pretty much superfluous to the raw nature of driving. But, I find it a really immersive detail. And I think when you've got a lot of details and nice graphics going on, it does have the effect of occupying your brain more, that then makes things just feel more immersive and in some ways more enjoyable. We've also just popped the headlights on there, and again, that's a nice feature. We've got some proper dynamic lighting coming from the front of the car. Again, really immersive and really nice to just see the tracks in these different types of lighting. Maybe that's a simple thing, but I just think it's really nice, and it's quite a change from what you typically see in the other more realistic driving games. Also, you notice some nice attention to detail in the different car headlight colours. But again, probably totally pointless, but you see in the endurance racing, the cars that have the more orangey headlights, or cars that have the whiter sort of like the halogen bulb lights, I guess, which have got more of a blue tint to them. And the game seems to try to capture that. Just a really nice touch there. But the real question, lap 7 of 8, can we actually overtake this guy to put our car into first place? Let's find out as the accelerated time. The sun is setting rather quickly. It's the fastest evening that these drivers have ever experienced in their lives, and we're right on his tail. You will notice, actually, in terms of the difficulty with the AI, it seems to me that the way they've done the different AI speeds is that the harder you make the AI, the better they seem to be on the brakes. So if you put them on the hardest setting, when you come to the like the NGK chicane that we just went through, where's flash of headlights, that you got to do that, just try and put him off. When you come to the NGK chicane, when the AI is on the really hard setting, they'll absolutely blast through that. Or when you come to tighter corners that really do require very precise brake input, on the hardest settings, AI zoom through it, and you'll really struggle. But on easier settings, the AI brake earlier and slower, it seems, and then they obviously go through the corner slower. So if you do put them on the harder settings and you brake too early, watch out for a car in your arse. But also, you're going to have to get good at your braking. Which, to be fair, I think that, that is one of the biggest cruxes of going fast is the brake pedal. Something I'm still learning on. Though I'm really fortunate that I do have PT1, Proto Simtech PT1 pedals that do make braking a lot easier. So, if in doubt, if you're rubbish, just spend money on ridiculously expensive equipment. It'll make you better. And those of you with a gamepad, just throw your games consoles out the window now if you intend to do it on the harder settings. Though I know for sure there will be some people that can ratchet this up to the hardest setting and they'll be alright in a gamepad. You have people that are just a bit weird like that. Back in the day, people playing Live for Speed and with a mouse and RBR with a keyboard, and they actually do put in really good times. So we got past him. It's the final lap. The sun's setting. Final few corners. Nice little haze in the distance. I thought I'd turn the lights off to see how dark it does get. It doesn't seem to get pitch black, but there is a reasonable amount of ambient lighting. I need to actually test it out on a circuit where it is really dark. Maybe there's some parts of Le Mans 24 where it's actually really dark, and the cars do have to have the headlights on to actually be able to see. So we'll try that in another video. But there you go. That's a 8-lap race. I hope I answered some of your questions. I hope that gave you an idea of what an 8-lap race was like. We're going to do another race soon on harder difficulty AI, and so you get an idea of what the AI is like on that. But yes, I hope just drop your questions in the comments. I'll try and answer what I can. Hope that's enjoyable. Until the next one, click the subscribe button, like us, dislike us, do whatever you feel like. I can't give out any more offers. I've been told off by the Pac-Man and Slightly Mad Studios. No more freebies in terms of grip and performance. So you've missed your opportunity there. But take care, have a good night, goodbye.